Hi, I'm Michael Redmond.
And I'm Kathryn Redmond.
And today we're going to talk about the idea of what it means to be successful, not alone, but in community. If you're going to be successful at all in business or in life, you're going to do it together. So let's jump in. Okay, today we're going to talk about we don't go through life alone. And it's amazing how many people really think about the fact that we have an American mindset.
We do.
And it's this idea of up from the bootstraps. It's the way the country was started. It was explored. We went out. There's all these famous people. And that whole idea is kind of a misnomer. And we especially talk about it being this misnomer because people are always going forward as a team. They're always going forward as somebody who, whether they say it or not or announce it to other people or not, there's always people behind them.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of, interesting sayings and proverbs and things that are around this idea of community. Like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? So this concept of if you really want to make an impact and do what it is that you're called to do, you are probably not going to be able to do that independent of other humans because A, it's not how we're designed, and B, you don't have what it takes to accomplish everything that needs to be accomplished by yourself.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm thinking about today, I had planned this topic and this schedule ahead of time, and then I found out before shooting that a dear friend of ours passed away. And somebody I've known for probably 35 years, a friend of my mom's, and somebody who had a huge impact in not only our lives indirectly, a huge impact in my mom's life, but an impact in our city.
Yeah, for sure.
As a business person who is incredibly, incredibly successful. And we're thinking about when we're thinking about this concept and this idea of what it looks like to live life in community, and nobody kind of gets those bootstraps up without somebody else giving them an opportunity or help or whatever. Our friend Tom is a great example because he is just really one of those people that, if we look at his life, it went from he and his wife living in a small little 2-bedroom house here in Chico. And I remember him he worked for PG&E.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Huh. And which, for those of you who don't know, aren't from Northern California, PG&E is the power company in California.
Pacific Gas and Electric.
And then he got himself a small mill, a metal mill, right? And he put it in the garage, and he started doing custom little fabrication jobs for people for PG&E and for other folks. And he picked up these contracts, and eventually that's how they started their machining business.
Oh.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but I
don't think I know any of this.
Okay. I know
his garage to be full of like really cool classic cars. I don't know any about how he got there part.
Well, his garage at home has the original mill in it.
Oh, cool.
That they had in the garage. Now, his garage at home is 4,000 square feet, and it's very different. But what they did is they went from that little tiny thing to owning a manufacturing company that did local manufacturing and incredibly detailed design metalwork, to also creating a farm equipment company that sent and sold and sent equipment around the world, from Australia to South America and throughout the United States. Or you might say
sells and sends, because company will continue to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. The company is continuing to go on, and it is employed at times almost 200 people. Yeah. And it went from this young couple that got married, who this was their town. They both went to Chico High, one of the local high schools. At that time, the only high school in town.
Well, it's still the only high school in town, according to some of us that went there.
According to some of us. And then develop this life. And because my mom actually was their housekeeper for 25 years and administrative, kind of an executive assistant sort of to Tom's wife, and be able to look at these things, it was really interesting because we got to see a picture of them that we were kind of like family. Mom was like family. And we watched the whole company grow and change in their life. But they were so giving in the community. So often they kept it, they were trying to be private about it. And yet everybody in town knew that they were gracious, kind people.
Yes.
They gave opportunities to kids at the high school for welding classes and training for trades and all that kind of stuff, to working with the homeless or to the disenfranchised, to people who had addictions, trying to help them out. There was this whole idea of, this is a guy or a husband and wife. It wasn't just him, it was them together,
For
working
sure.
together. It wasn't just them, but it was their friends and their community around them, some of which actually started other businesses in the community, and they all aged together. It wasn't just them trying to muster it up and build their business on their own, but they had employees and great staff and the support of even banks and doing all these different things that were in our community. And in a small community, you can understand a little bit more what it means, I think, that you don't just do this alone. I think a lot of times in larger cities, community is less and less seen. There's an epidemic of loneliness in America and in the West that's just growing and growing. And research is telling us, from the White House to great universities to the medical institutions, are telling us that this is a challenge. And I think really the part of discussion today is what goes into building those communities, and how is it that somebody helps us be successful and we help other people be successful. And that's the system that's supposed to be there. And quite frankly, great companies are never one-man shows or one-woman shows. Great companies are always something that the leadership understands that there's a flourishing of community. So talk to me about what do you think are the powerful benefits of community and how we've seen it in our life and our business?
There's a lot of ways to approach that question. One of the initial things that comes to mind for me is that community and being surrounded by people who you've come to trust and worked alongside and invested in, and they've invested in you, as community brings perspective. I think community allows us to have others believe in us in places where at times we lose the faith, and they're there to remind us of how far we've come, and how excited they are to watch us keep going. Some of our best community people they're our cheerleaders. Like they want to see us be successful. Even our bank, right? Like our bankers want us to succeed. And it's not just because that grows their deposits, which it does, but because they are fans of us because we've built trust and community with them. So I think the first thing that always comes to mind for me is that it's easy for us if we, and this could be just the season that I'm in, but it's easy for us to get lost in feeling like we have to solve everything and we have to be everything and we have to do everything. And community just is that reminder that, you know what, you are not alone doing this. You can be, you are going to be way more successful if you actually step back in to go, God, I need help. I can't do this alone. Hey. Yeah. So I love the perspective that comes with being surrounded by people who we've known and walked with and journeyed with as a starting place. Yeah.
It's funny because when you and I moved back to Chico in the 90s, this place that, I grew up from being 11 years old or 11 months old and growing up, and you moved here when you were 12 years old, and experiencing this town and relationships and community, and then leaving and being gone for 9 years and then coming back, it felt like we were, for us, one of the things that's part of our story is it felt like a failure. Like we didn't make it out in a big bad world, and certain circumstances drove us back where we thought this would be the wisest place to come and regain ourselves, regain our bearings, spend 3 or 4 years, and then take off again.
Yeah.
And then we decided not to.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So I'll back up to you go out. I remember when we left here, and we left here independently. We were friends, but we weren't dating. We weren't we weren't together. So we left independently. I went off to grad school. You went off. You were doing your own thing, and we had gotten married and connected. But I think when I left Chico, and I don't know if this is true for you, I was like, I will never go back there except to visit, say hi to family.
No, that was true for me too.
Like I am
Absolutely.
shaking the dust off this. And I think part of it was, I didn't know how to be a grown-up here. So when you say, we moved out, we left, gone for 9 years, and then some things went awry in our career at that point. And we moved back here, and it felt like tail tucked between legs, like went out in the big bad world and got our butts kicked. And now we had to come home, which we didn't have to come home. It was a good choice. There was a lot of reasons to come back to Chico. But I think what surprised me was the depth of the community we regained quickly when we came back. Yeah. And that was part of why, like, when it came to starting a business, you kind of go, why would I want to go anywhere else when I have this base and this support right where I am? Knowing that, especially in the early days of starting a business, I mean, that is life, and you need all the support you can get. So coming back to Chico was a really big deal, and choosing not to leave was surprising, and yet so right and so good because of the depth of community and the ability to do the things here that we've been able to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing for us to make sure that we hold on to a little bit in this conversation is, even in the beginning of starting a company, there are so many different challenges that a new company faces. Mm-hmm. And we were in our late 20s, early 30s when we came back to Chico, and I went back to the university, right, and got a degree. And once we did that, it was like, okay, this is the opportunity for us. I mean, this would be the natural time for us to go. We kind of had this buffer of that 3 or 4 years of me studying while we had experienced not only coming back into Chico and having that solid community, but also realizing after 3.5, 4 years, wow, this is something that if we could do the business, if we could do everything we were going to do here and keep that community, why wouldn't we? That would be huge, because instead of going out and starting over, and we didn't have to go somewhere else to start a company. We had the ability and the opportunity to start here. So that was powerful. So that was kind of that first moment of, why is community and making sure you understand going together so important for a business? In the beginning stages, it was important for us because it allowed us enough shelter, enough nutrients, enough nurturing, like a tree.
Or nutrients. If you want to, just combine. Right. You were desperate to combine the words.
Well, I was thinking about a tree.
We had nutrients.
I was thinking about a tree, and when they're young, they're susceptible to the wind. You need to stake them.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that they're protected and all that kind of stuff. And as they get to mature and their root system gets developed, they need less protecting. Well, community helps do that, and it also, in some things like aspens, all the different trees are part of the same organism. Yeah. In the redwoods, you get these giant old trees that are hundreds of feet tall that are all an individual tree, but they all intertwine their root system together to stay strong within whatever storms come across, especially in the redwood groves that, are on the coastal range of California and Oregon and everything else, because the storms come off the Pacific. And they have no problem not only surviving, but they thrive over there and grow to be ancient trees. So you kind of have that thing of, in the beginning, how do you stay protected and how do you do it? If you're going to grow a company that you want to be successful. And then as it gets going, you realize, for us, it was you and I together, which was unique. Talk about the uniqueness of you and I being in business together over what we see. A lot of people, they don't have that husband and wife partnership. That provided us a unique amount of strength and opportunity.
Yeah. At the end of the day, when I come home, it's not like, hey, honey, how was your day? Unless we're just kidding around, which does happen. Hey, honey, how was your day? I don't know. I was with you all day. How was your day? So a lot of people don't have that. I, there's something very, I know people think it's really weird to work together. A lot of people think it's weird. There's a lot of people who do it. I mean, we're not alone in it, but there's
a small minority that are
like,
husband and wife or family businesses.
Yeah, how do you do that? I would kill my spouse is usually the response that we get, or they would kill me, one of the two. But for me, being in partnership, being in business with you allows us to be in a position where we are pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
Right? We're putting our energies towards similar things that we have both committed to. And there is such a strength to that. And I mean, we've laughed often about how we made a deal early on that we couldn't have a bad day on the same day. Like, it's my day to have a bad day, you better be upbeat, or vice versa. And I'm pretty sure you have had to bear the weight of that more often than I have.
I'm not sure that's true, but
but we have actually done that fairly well. There's been this ability to kind of balance each other through not just the giftings and talents and stuff that we bring to the business, because we're very different, but through the good times and the hard times. We've been able to shore each other up really well. So even that has its own sense of community, right? We're not doing this alone. And I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It's powerful. It's helpful. There's a lot of shared context and understanding that we have. The hard work. Some people struggle with this whole idea of working together. Maybe because it's not their calling or anything else. But I know for us, one of the things that was significant was we did a lot of hard work on knowing who we were and our own personal growth. And then we got married, and even before we got married, we worked really hard on making sure we were doing some really hard work, counseling work and stuff like that, just to get to know, make sure that we were dealing with going into marriage eyes wide open, dealing with potentially hard things. So our first year of marriage was really, for the most part, cake. And we learned how to the things of communicating early on. We had the fortune of learning a lot of that in our lives, even before we were dating. So that whole partnership of what it looks like was really important, because on like you said, I think it boils down to, there are very few days we both had a bad day and we could lean on each other and we could tell each other, and there was somebody else to talk to, which is part of that whole process of community. Because as I look beyond our community, I start looking at our staff and I start looking at our friends, our faith community, our friendships outside of work, and our staff, and maybe not our staff, you start to lean on other people's hope on times when it's really hard. You need other people's belief that things are going to be okay. During the Great Recession, even my mom, I remember her saying, you've got a great thing here, when I'm bemoaning and wondering if we're going to survive, the latter part of the Great Recession. And she's like, all you have to do is survive the storm. This is just a season. It goes away. It's not the rest of the world. It's not the rest of eternity.
Right. This is not the final story.
This is not the final story. So just survive, and then you'll be ready for when things take off again. And believing in somebody who has a bigger perspective of time, because my parents were entrepreneurs and had several experiences. And my mom was definitely a reluctant entrepreneur with my father.
I love her for that.
I
feel her pain.
Some of that. But that whole idea of having community, and when things are really good, you have somebody to celebrate with. When things are challenging, you have somebody to lean on, and you have that hope. It's, where one goes alone, you can easily fall. Two can hold each other up. Three is a strand that is not easily broken. And that principle coming from the Old Testament, the Ecclesiastes, and being able to go, this whole community is so significant. And then when you start getting into the successes, like it's easy for people who are the head of a company, the one that's the founder or whatever, to step into the limelight and take all the glory.
I know you do. It's terrible. You should. I'm kidding.
What? Huh? But you think of people like Walt Disney, one of my heroes. Absolutely amazed. But the guy was definitely I'm never going to tell anybody in the world that we couldn't have done this without our team. He was famous for taking credit for himself being a genius and amazing. And, the Walt Disney Studios, and it was all about Walt. And not to mention that he tried to bankrupt the company multiple times, and his brother and Fortune bailed him out. Not fortune as in money, as in pure, probably moves of God, let alone just it didn't happen. But
I'm kind of laughing because, last night we had this conversation about another one of your heroes, Solomon, who at the end just kind of imploded. And
he did.
All I can hear in my head is your heroes are deeply flawed, man. Deeply flawed.
My heroes are deeply flawed, which I think is part of what is so amazing. I mean, you look at King David.
Oh, yes.
King David is a lot of people's hero, and he deeply flawed.
Yes.
But
my favorite moment in last night's interaction was when one of our people said, "There's this guy, Jesus. You should choose him as your hero." That was the best. Okay, sorry, but we digress.
But we digress. This and again, we keep talking about people in our community. Community is incredibly important for driving a successful business. One of the things that I just kind of want to say very clearly right now is to folks that are listening, and to folks we coach, you cannot grow a successful business unless you understand that it's a community effort. Yeah. There's not enough AI. There's not enough. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough hands. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough energy to do everything that needs to be done in a one-man show. It doesn't work like that. I don't even care if you're a one-man, one-woman consultant. You are still in need of the customers and that transaction and the relationship. And some people are convinced. They somehow convince themselves that I did all this, and not even the customers were helpful or participant. Look at how amazing was it. Look at what I made. Let me beat my chest and declare it or something. And that just is so, especially today, and when we're talking about in the shadow of losing a friend and losing an entrepreneur and a benefactor to our city who gave so much money and so much time and so much of his craft, even with his employees and everything else, to doing everything from making an amazing sign out in front of the Boys and Girls Club that's just this metallic art that all it was supposed to be a sign, but he couldn't let it just be a sign, to building and adding to the Salvation Army and doing all these kinds of things in the community. So even the drug rehab facility that the Salvation Army runs was there and established.
But he couldn't have done it alone.
No, he couldn't have done it alone. He had a team of people working in his company. They gave him the opportunity. He had opportunities that were breaks in the beginning. He was able to get, because he worked for the local utility company, PG&E, he was able to, and he had a good reputation, he was able to get contracts from them. It was all in community. It was all in relationship. And it was all because everybody always said, Tom and Sue are amazing people. Now, I'd get in a lot of trouble if they ever listened to this, but Sue wouldn't know how to ever find this recording.
And you know what? Your mom wouldn't be able to help her.
My mom asked me this morning.
News.
My mom asked me this morning, what is YouTube? What is this YouTube thing? Could you explain this to me again? I'm like, how do you explain things like this to children?
Yes, exactly.
So as we move forward and we talk about this community stuff, it really kind of continues to boil down to the message that is important for all of us as entrepreneurs and business people and people in community, We've got to have the people around us, the team around us, or we really can't be successful in life.
No.
So the power of being a leader is one of the questions is, how well do you nurture community? How well do you nurture community in your personal life? How well do you nurture community in your business life? How well do you nurture community inside your company? Because it's those bonds that are going to be strong. You're going to need them at times. And it's either going to be the strength of putting up with the storm or the strength of growing and the weight that comes from growth. Thoughts? Yes. Yes. I know you agree with me.
What you said.
If you were going to say one thing to leaders that we're coaching on a basis about community, to encourage them to grow it and build it and deepen it, what would that be?
I think the first would be take inventory. Like, what is the community that you have that has gotten you here, right? Don't be Walt Disney. Like, own the fact that you've had help. Like, you're not a one human show.
And you know what's strange about him, just to butt in?
Because he managed to build great community. I don't know.
He knew he needed community, and he knew he needed people, and knew he needed a team to get it.
Yeah.
He just
get better
failed
at
to acknowledging them.
Yeah. But I think pulling back and realizing if you've had any measure of success to date, you have community. And being able to ask the question, where else do I need to develop trust and deepen relationships to keep moving forward? Because I think, the way that you develop community is by being trusted and being trustworthy. And the only way that happens is you also give trust to other people, as you trust them to support and help and be on your team. So take stock and then be committed to building community and making sure you surround yourself with people who can help you grow and can teach you the things that you don't know because you don't know everything, or maybe can do something better than you can because you need to be putting your attention somewhere else. So, I can remember I was even just telling this story to somebody yesterday about, you used to be the guy behind the camera and in front of the camera, and you were all things when it came to the video, and kind of having to come to the place of realizing that is not the best use of my time. There are people who do this better than me. I don't even have time to keep my chops up. Like, what does that look like? So you can let go, but that requires trust.
Yeah.
And giving away pieces and allowing people to help.
Yeah.
So that wasn't one thing. That was like three things.
No, it was really good. I think we'll leave it with that. That's really the thing that we want you to remember. If you're building a business or leading a business, you need to really understand that one of the skills that you have to have in your pocket is building community. It will be your lifeblood during the storms that come, and it will be incredibly important to develop and deepen the roots so that you can handle the growth and support the growth without it crushing you. I'm Michael Redman.
And I'm Kathryn Redman.
Have a great day.